Hi everyone, welcome to the Cloud Skills Show. We are back after a very brief break and we're really glad to have you with us. So on today's show, we're going to be bringing you some great content from our .NET community. Now, hopefully you might have noticed that we actually had our .NET Conf last week and also the long-awaited launch of .NET 5. So we're going to be talking about that today, and we're going to be talking about much more. And we've got some wonderful people to actually talk about that. So we have Carol Logan, who is actually going to be leading today's show, and she's a lead developer and community organizer from Glasgow. We've got Laurent Bugnon, who is cloud advocate, and he is in, I was going to say Sweden there, Switzerland. That's terrible. Sorry, Laurent.
That's okay. We are well known for Volvo cars.
Yeah, we have Jessica White, who, and it's actually Jessica's third time on today's show. So welcome back again. And Jessica is a developer and community organizer from Nottingham in England. And finally, we have David Whitney, and this is his first time on Cloud Skills Show, and he is an independent consultant and Microsoft MVP. But we are going to be starting with Carol, just by introducing Carol, and this is Carol's first time on the Cloud Skills Show. So hugely warm welcome today, Carol, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
So Carol, I'd love to to know a bit about you, and before we go into the content today, and maybe tell us a bit about what you do for work and how you got into the .NET community.
Yeah, sure. I am a development team lead at a digital agency in Glasgow called The Creator, and my job is kind of part dev lead and part C# developer, and kind of doing some Umbraco work and general web development. So a little bit of everything. And from the community perspective, I run a couple of local meetups. So I run the Ladies of Code Glasgow meetup, and also the Umbraco Glasgow meetup too. And yeah, a few years ago we done DDD Scotland as well, but we've not done that in a few years. We'll need to bring it back.
Oh, that's amazing. Oh, yeah. Well, hopefully again soon. I know there's some really cool stuff coming out of Scotland. And Umbraco community, I mean, we'll probably talk a bit more about communities later on, but that's, that's mostly associated with like content and digital agencies, right? I don't know if everyone will know Umbracos. Do you want to just briefly explain what that does?
Yeah, sure. It's a .NET content management system. So it's built on .NET Framework for now. It'll be going to .NET Core, and I think .NET 5 at some point, or maybe they'll maybe wait till 6. So yeah, it's on the .NET platform, and you can develop in that using Razor and C#. And from a community perspective, it's got like a really, really big community, and it's a really it's kind of friendly, is literally like the kind of tagline. It's on the t-shirts, it's on our stickers, on our laptops. So I think they're a bit like the .NET community. It's kind of quite a big community and quite an active community in terms of meetups and online events now, and generally just online on Twitter. If you search for #Umbraco, you'll probably find a lot of good chat on there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a developer myself. I'm more in the IT professional space, but one of my previous jobs at Microsoft was actually working with digital agencies. So that was where I got to know a little bit about Umbraco and the wonderful communities around it. But I would say you're pretty quiet, sort of stealthy community. So it's it'd be great to find out a little bit more on today's show later on.
Yeah, definitely. And there is a kind of definitely kind of cross section there, because a lot of folks that are Umbraco developers, they probably are involved with the .NET community in some way as well, being .NET developers. So hopefully there's some folks that will be interested in both.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, shall we get started with the first bit of today's show then, Carol? And I think we're going to be bringing in Laurent. Where is he? There he is. Laurent, hope you've got over my insult at the start of the show there.
No. Sweden is not an insult. It's all good. I love Swedish people.
I have been to all these countries and I know where they are.
I know you have. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to disappear off, and I think Carol, you're going to continue the conversation with Laurent.
Great. Thank you. How's it going, Laurent? All good?
All good, Carol. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then again, right, congrats on your presentation at .NET Conf last week. It was great. So yeah, we talked about .NET Conf. It was amazing, right? It was around the clock, and you gave a very good presentation. So I wanted to call that out. Absolutely.
Thank you. Well, yeah, it was my first .NET probably one of my first in the .NET community in general. So for it to be in .NET Conf was a bit nervy, but it was good. It was really good, and there was a lot of kind of positive feedback after. So people were
That's great.
And how about you? Are you recovered from 3 full days of content, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was mostly listening. I was also helping with some of the sessions, and especially with the moderation, like answering questions or making sure that the questions were brought to the screen so that the presenter could answer them. And it was nice. We had really a good, very good momentum. A lot of viewers. I got the numbers. We cannot really share those, but I can tell you that I think it was our best year in terms of .NET Conf. And it's really exciting. It's been running for 10 years. And for those of you who don't know, .NET Conf is actually a conference organized by the community with Microsoft's help. And of course, there are a lot of Microsoft employees who are also working, people like Beth Massey and Jeff Fritz, and all those well-known people, Jamie Singleton, etc. But the trigger and everything started really by the community, for the community. And so this is one of those initiatives that we really like.
Yeah, it was really great. It was really good to see the mix of content. So I think like day one was mostly like Microsoft folks and people from the .NET teams, and then onto some community talks. And it was really impressive. Was it like 24 hours, I think, at one point, wasn't it? It was like right.
So we had a break. It was 3 days, and we had a break after day 1. But then after that, day 2 and day 3 were just around the clock. So there was really all around, and we covered Asia and then Australia, Asia, and then Europe, and then it went to the US. So it was quite impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. Some friends and I organized a Umbraco kind of hackathon / conference type thing, and trying to do it to suit all different time zones is really, really hard.
It's a lot of coordination, yeah.
So well done to the team and to the community.
Yeah, no, they're amazing. I was brought a little bit late, and because of my position here in Europe, of course, it allowed me to help. But the team does an amazing job, so I really want to congratulate them on that. Yeah, but yeah, we had a lot of good stuff, right? And I actually would love if we can go back on some of the announcements. And like Adam said, .NET 5 is out, so this is awesome, and it's also on time. So yes, it's long awaited, but at the same time, there is now a very clear schedule on .NET releases, and this is quite exciting because until now it was pretty much released whenever it was ready. And now we have, finally, we have something, and I can maybe try to share my screen to show the timeline. Let's see if it works. All right, so my screen is up, and we see the screen. That's awesome. So yeah, so this is a .NET release plan. And as you can see now, the plan is that every year there will be a major release, like a full number, okay? And this is pretty cool. And so you probably realize that we went from .NET Core 3.1 to .NET 5, and everybody's asking why not 4? And the reason is very simple. We don't want to confuse people with .NET 4 because .NET 4.7, 4.8 is a classic .NET framework. Now there is clearly a movement of unification, taking Core, taking Classic, putting everything in one, and moving to .NET 5 and .NET 6 next year. And what we can say also about this graph is that when we see a LTS, it means this is a long-term support, which is only every second year. But to be honest, the commitment from the .NET team is that there will be only minor differences between normal release, a .NET 5.0, for example, and a long-term support. So really the recommendation is when the long-term support comes out, it's probably a good idea to see if you can easily migrate to that, and that should be easy normally. That's at least the promise. So we're on time with .NET, which is awesome, and there are a lot of cool improvements, right? So maybe I know you are a big fan of C#, right, Carol?
Yeah, so I'm a C# developer as my day job, as you are as well, I think.
Yeah, same for me. I've been coding on C# since 2001 now, so it's been actually since the very first version. So I'm a big fan of C#, and so C# 9 is going to be supported, which is really cool. C# 9 brings a lot of a lot of improvements and a lot of new things. So what's your favorite, Carol? What do you think?
There's a bunch of nice new things, like rather than massive features, but just nice syntax that you can use. Like I really liked just the simplicity of being able to initialize new variables, just say new, and don't have to say what the object is unless you need to. That is just anything that makes things that little bit quicker, and as long as it's readable is the big thing for me. So sometimes in some languages I'm like, yeah, that's not a lot of code, but I can't just look at it and see what it's doing. So I think there's a nice balance of it being like quick to build, but also readable, which is really important.
Yeah, this is really cool. And there is here I'm pulling a docs page. So for those of you who are watching, if you go just go into Bing or Google or whatever search engine you prefer and type C# 9, and you will see what's new in C# 9. And so here we have kind of what we have. So there are a few things which are sometimes a little bit confusing, like top-level statement, right? You don't need the main method anymore. You don't really need. So that would be a classic way to write things, and now you have these kind of things, right? And both things, it's really just what they call syntactical sugar, in the sense that it doesn't really make a huge difference in the terms of what code is produced, what intermediate language is produced, but a few interesting things. So I think a lot of stuff that we see in C# 9 is really about writing less code, and records are definitely one of those, right? Because how many times did you write these kind of things, right? Where you have a class with a person with an initializer, and then you have a first name and a last name, which are properties with getters and possibly setters. And this is a lot of work to do. And now you can simplify all that pretty much on one line, which makes things really, really easier. So here you have record person, string first name, string last name, and then the corresponding properties are going to be added automatically, right? And with records, you can really do anything that you do with normal classes, which is pretty cool. So there are really cool things here. What else can we see? So one thing which is really impressing me is in terms of perf. So C# is bringing performance for sure, but .NET 5 is also bringing a lot of performance by itself. And we have also some numbers on that. And one thing that is really interesting is if you compare, and you know that, or you maybe you don't know, but it's actually important to know that .NET Core runs on multi-platforms, right? So you can run your applications on Windows like previously with .NET Classic, but now with .NET Core, you can also run them on Linux. And it's important because a lot of the web runs on Linux. And we see that we have really a lot of performance improvements. For example, on Linux, 30% socket performance. So every time that you do some input-output over socket, over .NET Core 3.1, which in itself was already an improvement. And also gRPC is important because a lot of people in .NET Classic were doing WCF, Windows Communication Foundation, and that is not supported going forward. We still support it with .NET Classic, obviously, but that is not going to be further developed in .NET Core. And so the recommendation is to use now gRPC, which is kind of a similar way to do things. It's server-client communication where you can create your client and your server using prototypes, and a little bit like we have entities when you do entity framework, for example. And here we see also that there are some huge performance improvement, which is of course super interesting. JSON serialization, which is super important when you do REST APIs, for example, also huge performance improvements. Large collections, array. So every time you do some array operation in memory or things like that, then you will see some improvement. So this is quite nice.
And I saw that there were some changes, I think, to the ASP side of things for, am I right in thinking that with Web API, we automatically get like the Swagger UI docs and things like that now?
Yeah, so this is also interesting, and I have that somewhere. And the thing which is really cool now is that when you have so this is what we call the cloud native investments, right? This is when you have APIs. And you can do that with REST APIs, like the traditional ways that we have. And what we have now is that when you write an API in .NET 5, this is going to automatically generate a lot of things. Like you're going to have this is supporting Open API, which means that things like Swagger, the documentation that you see when you go to an API is going to be generated automatically. And this is really cool because very often when you hit an API as a developer, the hardest part is finding out, okay, what parameters do I need? And because this is all text format, right? It's all JSON, what you get back, which is essentially a text format. It's all HTTP. And so it can be a little bit difficult to understand how do I call the API. And having those Swagger documentation generated automatically is going to help us terribly. Client generation is also possible. What it means is that if you have some APIs, then you can automatically generate a client which is going to do the dirty work of calling, like instantiating and managing, by the way, an HTTP client, which is always kind of difficult to do. Like, do you keep it in memory or do you discard it and new it every time? And also, of course, way easier to publish to Azure. Which is always nice. We can talk also a little bit more about that when we talk about Visual Studio, about new things that they add to publish to Azure in a very nice way, which means that right-click publish is not a dirty word anymore, apparently, according to Damien Brady and Abel Wang. And also gRPC is interesting because it also allows you to generate your client and your server. So if you have this, what they call a proto file, which is essentially a specification file for your service, then you can also generate your client and your server, and that's going to allow us to concentrate on really, improving the API instead of doing the dirty work and the boilerplate code. So that's quite interesting. But let's not forget client, right? Because client is also super important in .NET, and I've been in Azure for almost 4 years now. But before that, I was doing a lot of client development, and clients. There are two things which are interesting. One thing is Blazor, and we chatted, you and I, just a little bit about Blazor before, and I like to say Blazor is Silverlight done right, and Silverlight is kind of my, it was my favorite technology in the days. But one big problem with Silverlight is that it was a proprietary technology, and on the other hand, Blazor generates WebAssembly. And WebAssembly is a standard. It's supported by everybody. It's running on pretty much every major browser, including mobile browsers and everything. And so that allows you to create very rich applications, very rich client applications running in a web browser, or you can also run them as for example, PWA, right? So those Windows applications, so where they look standalone, it looks a little bit standalone, etc. But this is C# code, and so you don't have to worry too much about JavaScript. You can, however, interact with JavaScript, so you can totally have a page which is mixed with some JavaScript and some C#. And there are really a lot of improvements in .NET 5. First of all, it's way faster. It's also smaller. They are doing a lot of very nice things in when they generate the code, which will then be downloaded on the client to compress things and to make things smaller and to link everything, to remove basically what is not needed, etc. So this is really exciting. And so if you want to know more about Blazor, I recommend everybody. There were actually quite a lot of sessions at .NET Conf about Blazor, including some by Steve Sanderson, who is pretty much the creator of Blazor. They did a lot of demos, so this is really exciting. And another thing also is, if we go back a little bit in time, okay, we saw Xamarin. So Xamarin is definitely, our major platform for mobile development. This is running on iOS and Android. It also has a lot of improvement in the latest version of Visual Studio, notably when you write XAML, which is the language that you use to define the interface in Xamarin and also in WPF. The experience is way improved, and also they added new components. For example, brushes. And brushes, I love brushes. I worked for a long time in client development, like I mentioned. And I was always working with designers, and they always want brushes, things that you can paint your UI with, to do some gradients and to do some things like that. Shapes are important as well, because you don't want everything to be square. Sometimes you want a round button, or you want a triangle, or whatever, and then you can have those shapes and paths, which allow you essentially to do, for example, some tracing, and to import a path and to put it in your UI. And so you have some really evolved UI. And can you imagine that this is all then running on iOS and Android? So this is really cool. You develop your UI once, and after that it runs everywhere. So this is really cool.
Yeah, there's so much. Like, I've watched a bunch of the talks back from .NET Conf, and I've still got a list of but I think they're all on YouTube, right? And are they on Learn as well?
Yeah, everything is, if you go to the Microsoft Developer YouTube, this is there. Let's talk quickly about Windows Forms and WPF, because Windows Forms, even though it's a very old technology, actually, it's a legacy technology. It was there, if you can imagine, in .NET 1.0, which came out in the 2000s, right? So 2000, 2001, my very first .NET application was a Windows Forms application. In the days, and Windows Form is still very much used. And so the big question was, is it going to be still supported in .NET 5? And the answer is yes. You can still do Windows Form. We know at Microsoft that a lot of people are doing that. We have improved the designers so that it's easier, not only for Windows Form, but also for WPF. WPF is a little bit like the big brother of .NET Forms in terms of design and of user experience. So it's kind of split a little bit, who is doing WPF, who is doing Windows Forms, but really a lot of tooling. And one thing which is cool with .NET 5 also is that before, when you were deploying an application to a client, client computer, you had a lot of files, right? You had your exe, but you also had some DLL, some libraries, and then maybe some helper files, some resource file, and stuff like that. And now you have the possibility to create just one exe where everything is located. And of course, that makes things way easier. And also, the really cool thing is that you can run those desktop applications without having .NET Framework on the target machine. And this is a huge deal, because until recently, when you wanted to run WPF or Windows Forms on the client machine, you had to install the .NET Framework on the machine. And this is way complicated to manage, right? It means that every time there is a new version of .NET, the administrator has to potentially upgrade, hundreds of thousands of computers, and this is really hard. And now you don't need that anymore, because basically everything is going to be embedded inside the exe, everything which is necessary, and then you double-click the exe, and that's going to run. So it's still, a platform with all the convenience of the garbage collector and the runtime and everything, but you don't have to worry about it anymore. You don't have to install it anymore. So this is really cool. Also, new controls, right, which I mentioned here. For example, WebView 2, which is way more performant than before. A lot of new controls. So this is, this is really nice to have.
That's cool. I have to confess, I've never made Windows Forms. I came to .NET around about when MVC came out. I was a Java developer before, so I've never had the joy of building Windows Forms or even web forms, to be honest. I've lived in the kind of post-MVC land.
Absolutely, I hear you. And this is the beauty of .NET and of C#, right? Is that you can do so many things with the same languages, right? You can do, desktop application. That's what I started with. But very fast, I went to ASP.NET and I was doing websites and web applications. And then later, I went back to client development with WPF, and I was really deep into WPF for a long time. And now I'm in Azure, and I'm doing .NET in Azure, and this is cool. This is totally different because it's backend, but it's the same language and same framework. So a little bit more also about cloud native here. That microservices are super important these days. It's almost a trendy word, right? And one thing that we did is that we have the possibility to do smaller microservices, right? Because they need to be micro, so they need to be easy to manage, they need to be small. It's, again, a single file application. So with the same kind of technologies that we had before with WPF, now we have also those single file things. And this new, it's not quite released yet. It's a little bit like an experiment project TIE, which is basically something like an orchestrator to help you to compose your microservices, to build them, and then to automatically deploy them to Azure in containers with Kubernetes and everything. Also, of course, a lot of work on cross-platform development with Linux. And you know that you can run Linux on Windows with WSL, the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is running here. So what it means is that you can totally develop in Visual Studio your Linux applications, your Linux microservices. You can test them locally on your Windows machine, but they actually run on Linux, on Windows, the Windows subsystem for Linux. And then once you're happy, you can package them as a container, deploy them, and that all happens pretty automatically with Style. So again, if you're interested for that, go to .NET Conf videos. The last thing I want to mention, I think we're slowly at time, probably I didn't keep an eye on the clock, but last thing I want to mention, because I love this, my former manager, Tim Fuhr, is working hard, and his team is working hard on that. You can now do a right-click publish from Visual Studio without having Damien Brady, my colleague from DevOps, coming and banging on your head, because this is not something you should do. And basically, the way that it works now is that when you do a right-click publish now in Visual Studio, in the new version of Visual Studio, this is going to interact with GitHub Actions, and it's going to create everything you need as a proper, continuous integration, continuous deployment pipeline in GitHub Actions, create the YAML for you and everything. And basically, Visual Studio is going to take care of all the dirty work for you. And this is really awesome because, you have the convenience of right-click publish, which is always cool to do when you want to be fast. But at the same time, you don't have to watch over your shoulder to see if Damien is here. No, I'm joking. I mean, you want to have a pipeline. It's really good to have a pipeline. Definitely for repeatability and everything, and here you have the tool which is helping you to do it. So this is very very nice improvement in Visual Studio.
Yeah, that's really nice. It kind of enforces best practices, but still with the convenience of right-click publish.
Absolutely.
That's really sweet. Great. So yeah, that was a good recap. Like, we literally could talk about it for hours because it was 3 days worth of content, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I had 3 days of content condensed in 20 minutes.
I had to create so many more new short links while we're talking as well. So we will be putting all the links on our page afterwards, and there is the link as well. Yeah. So Laurent, thank you, and we will be back in a few minutes. So don't go away. And also, we would like to encourage people to ask questions as well. I know that someone has already asked a question from Ahmed Yahya, which I'm just going to bring up screen. What about Service Fabric?
Yeah, so Service Fabric is still definitely something that we support. I have to be totally honest, I'm not an expert in .NET in Service Fabric, so I can't really answer that, for sure and be 100% certain. I know that we still support that. I know that there is also a little bit of oh my God, this is a difficult word to say. De-emphasization. Okay, it's a little bit less in the foreground than it used to be, and now we kind of recommend people to look into containerization with either ACI or with Kubernetes, especially all the work that we do with Style, for example, with .NET and with other platforms on Azure are going to make the management of Kubernetes way easier, and that kind of shifts a little bit the attention from Service Fabric. But Service Fabric is still supported. So, it's like very often at Microsoft, that's what I learned when I was a partner back then, that, it never disappears, right? But maybe there is a little bit less announcements around it. So that's what I want to answer. And I probably don't want to go deeper because, like I said, I'm not an expert. But if you want, Ahmed, please send me an email or everything, or write me on Twitter, and I'll be happy to connect you with people who can help you more.
Brilliant. There's Laurent's Twitter handle on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And my DMs are open. If you don't want to write in public, you can just send a message. Okay,
so now we are going to meet Jessica. And Laurent, I'm going to leave you on because I have a memory from Ignite in January, where I think you were presenting at Microsoft Ignite, and then you also said that you would go up to Nottingham as well to
Yeah.
to speak at .NET Nuts, and it was an interesting journey, right?
It was very interesting. So I have this very good friend who is organizing, the user group in Nottingham, and he's been trying to have me for a long time. And Jeremy Leakness, who is a very, very good friend of mine, and who back then was on the Cloud Advocates team as well, was also in London. And so both of us embarked on a train ride to Nottingham. And it was really fun. But for me, it was magical to go to Nottingham because I had this, Robin Hood memory in my head. And I really wanted to meet the sheriff, but it didn't happen. We only gave a presentation there. But yeah, that's where I met Jess and all these very nice people there. It was awesome.
A little story to that as well is Pete, who I'm sure is watching, also changed the venue on the same day as well. So you had the jaunt from London up there, but all of us as well were having to run from one side of Nottingham to the other to go to the right place. I think everybody was a bit stressed out that day.
I'm sure it was, but I really enjoyed the first of all, the location where you are was really good, so I appreciate that. I appreciated that. Sorry, but delivering a presentation to a user group is always a pleasure. So yeah, the ride was fun. The really hard part was finding a cab who accepted our credit card and didn't, because we didn't have any cash, because we travel so much that we just don't take cash. So, but eventually we managed, so it was all good.
It was a pleasure having you as well.
Thank you so much.
So Laurent, we'll see you again in a few minutes. So don't go away.
I'm here.
So Jess, it would be we've had you on the Cloud Skills show. This is the third time now.
Yeah,
so
glutton for punishment.
So for anyone that missed the previous two episodes, would you mind just doing a quick introduction to yourself and telling us about what you do for work and in the community?
In the community, I run .NET Knots with Pete Gallagher, as we just talked about, which is a meetup for .NET developers and those interested in .NET in Nottingham in the UK. I also run DDD East Midlands Conference with Morten Broccoli and Rachel Watson. This was going to be our second year, but unfortunately COVID happened, so hopefully it'll be happening again next year instead. I am just about to become a lead developer. I'm currently going from one job to another, so that's an exciting adventure in itself. And I talk too much, so you keep having me back on the show.
We love you. We love you. And I can't believe that you weren't a lead developer at all. All I'm saying is, that it's well overdue. And Carol, I know that you're a lead developer as well. Have you got any sort of words of wisdom for Jess as she embarks upon a new position?
I know, I'm sure she's already, as you say, she's already at that level. I don't know if I've got words of wisdom, but I think it's always interesting to see. I think lead developer is like a kind of generic title, but different at different places and for different people. It's a different balance of, for some people, it's a 50-50 split on like still coding and doing kind of lead stuff. For some people, it's way one way or way the other. So I'm always really, really interested to see what the balance is for other people. So I might message you in a few months.
Oh, please do. I'll be asking for advice as well.
Yeah, and it is. It's I always find it chatting. I know when I was like a new lead, went from senior to lead, and I know chatting to other people, it's always a case of, you get to senior, right? And that's because you've got lots of experience in that exact job. And then you go to lead and you're like, oh, wait, I'm new at this. So there's a whole lot of, and it's really good, like a whole lot of new skills to learn as well. So good luck. I'm sure you'll be really great.
Thank you. I'm excited for it.
Yeah. And how, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say I attended an event called the Lead Developer Conference last year, and a shout out to the wonderful team that organised that White October events. It is one of the better events that I've been to. I've been to a lot of events and I really enjoyed it. But it was amazing to see everyone from like literally the CTO of like a FTSE 100 company to people in like a startup had that same job title of lead developers. It's a massive gulf in between them. And I know that they said actually they were going to do something more for CTOs just to try and like sort of do something special for that layer, because there is just such a difference in that job as well.
They do some really, really good online content as well. I'd recommend for folks to follow the Lead Dev Twitter, and they put some videos and some blog posts up. It's like really, really insightful content, because I always think like as in the coding side, you can Google your problem and someone's probably put it on Stack Overflow, right? But when it's the lead stuff, that you can't necessarily Google people, if only. So it's good to get other people's approaches to leadership and like different ways to manage different people or different types of projects or different clients or whatever. So it's always good to hear other people's experiences.
They publish all of their talks on YouTube as well, so you can get all of the past talks, which is great. That's pretty much my December plan.
That's cool.
You got all of December off, Jess?
Yeah, moving house, new job, needed a bit of a break.
Yeah, that's quite a Christmas time, new house, new job.
Yeah, it wasn't very well planned.
Or perfectly planned. In the new year, you'll have a new house, new job, and be ready to go.
Have you been roped into doing any of the festive tech calendar slots, Jess?
No, I've been hiding under the duvet and hope that they won't email me.
Well, I'm on the committee, so you're at danger right now. Okay, no, but we'll leave it there. Cool. So should we add David in as well now?
Sure.
Hi, David. Hi, welcome.
Hi. How are you doing?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you very much. I'm very Thursday.
Yeah. Well, you've got plenty of liquid behind you, but maybe later. So would you like to introduce yourself? Because this is your first Cloud Skills show, but you've been active in the .NET community for a while.
Too long. I say too long as if I'm fatigued. I've been working at .NET events since 2002, which is terrifying. I'm David. Speaking of ceremonial and former theoretical job titles, I've been chief technical architect of this and vice president of engineering of that, and it all sounds wonderfully made up because mostly it is. Working companies like Just Giving and the Train Line and Just Eat and all the kind of the UK.com circle that runs on .NET basically, or Java or a bunch of other stuff. But in 2020, with hashtag current situations and all that, I've been taking a bit of a break and a step back, and I've spent this year doing weird and experimental software is kind of my generic excuse for it. I'm fooling around, trying to find the fun again. And I know it sounds like a really, really mad thing to say, but I spent last year doing a very, very senior sounding title with a lot of travel and a lot of teams and thousands of devs, and I burnt out hard. So I've dedicated this year to like building GameWare emulators and hacking exercise bikes and writing 3D engines and all the stuff that you think is impossible and you don't know how to do. I've been on a mission to see whether I suck enough to fumble my way through it, and it's been amazing.
Sure, you're amazing. I'm getting a Peloton in December. Are you saying that you're going to hack that or something like that?
I'm more like £119 Amazon exercise bike hacking than Peloton Super Premium Valley Girl kind of setup, but a boy can dream.
If you hook up an exercise bike to Pokemon Red, I would be really happy.
So funnily enough, one of the things I did was I hooked up an exercise bike using C#. There we go. We're on topic. To drive Google Maps.
Oh, cool.
And I got it working, and then that was the last time I got on the exercise bike, which not even irony, just got the interesting bit done, you know? So yeah, I've been doing wacky programming and writing my third book slowly and glacially, which is harder than the bike.
I'm thinking like live coding while on the exercise bike, while doing a spinning class or something like that. That sounds like the next challenge.
You're going to get me hot and bothered if you keep on talking like that.
Cool. If you touch brake, the resistance goes up and it makes it harder for you to pedal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, every time you fail a test, you do a shot and pedal harder. It's the perfect union.
As a meetup organizer, all these cool projects you're talking about, the meetup organizer side of me, I'm sure you're the same, Jess. You're like, that would make a really good talk. You should do a talk about that or a blog post about it or something.
They're all already written.
Oh, cool.
I probably shouldn't say that live where people can stitch me up.
Awesome.
Oh, right, cool. Shall we add Laurent back in? I feel like he's been away too long.
Yeah, I want to hear all about Blazor Conf. Sorry.
So I think we said, and obviously, I can't necessarily contribute and answer exactly the same questions that I'm going to ask all of you. But we said we'd have a bit of a sort of round table. Also, give folks that are watching us live a chance to ask questions as well. But I thought I'd start off with a few questions for each of you, and we're sort of going to go around a little bit like, I don't know, a little bit like Blind Date, if any of you have ever seen that. Laurent, I don't expect you to have seen it, but hopefully everyone else knows what I mean. It's sort of like, yeah, you sort of like, there's like three single people, and then there's someone behind the door, and they ask them the question, and they ask the same to like all three, and it's, well, you need to look it up on YouTube after this. Anyway,
I'm not sure I will, but I believe you.
Yeah,
a 1960s pop star fits together 90 singles to go on embarrassing dates. It's basically The Bachelor.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to do that, but with like a .NET like twist, anyway, and slightly less romantic questions, hopefully. So I was going to ask each of you. I need to stop laughing. I thought we'd start off just by asking. You know, we just had .NET Conf last week, and I love that mascot, and we all want one now. What is? I see. My raccoon. There we go. So what would be the best thing that each of you saw last week at .NET Conf? And we're gonna go round, and should we go like clockwise? So we can start with David. Put you on the spot there.
Sure. No, I reckon the things that really interested me, I joke about it being BlazorConf. I loved seeing all the content about Blazor, but like, fine, Microsoft are going to talk about Blazor, but the interesting stuff was like, there's this great talk by Johnny, surname I can't pronounce, beginning with H, Hubergs, I probably messed that up completely, I apologize, about controlling his home sauna using .NET 5.
Oh, I saw that one, it was really good.
Just awesome. And there's this theme here where we know you can make web apps in .NET. Steve Sanderson's amazing, I'm sure Blazor's going to land. I know that happens, but like, give me the saunas controlled by random programs that you write in your pants. Like, I'm totally here for that. So I thought that was really, really awesome. And I really liked the GitHub Actions talk, because I've been doing a load of work with GitHub Actions recently, and they are definitely going to eat everything. Like, they're really coming for all your CI infrastructure. They're coming for everything. They're really good. They're really usable. And I feel like people don't really know enough about them yet, because they're a little bit threadbare and fresh, but super, super cool. So it's really nice to see GitHub Actions kind of being put front and center, even if it does cause presumably a little bit of internal strife for everyone with all their Azure DevOps pipelines. But yeah, super, super awesome. Like, really, really great to watch.
Awesome. Okay, so same question again to Jess now.
I like long walks on the beach and talking about .NET performance improvements. Yeah, I mean, Laurent's already gone through all of it, but just the astounding improvements on .NET 5, even compared to Go now as well, which previously was outstripping it. I'm very excited as a back-end dev. I want to play with it, and I want to do performance testing, and I want to see how far I can push it. So yeah, very excited for that, and all of the gRPC announcements as well, obviously. But as I say, Laurent's already gone through all of it.
Well, we've got this, and there's a blog about those performance improvements as well. I'll put the link on screen as well, which sort of, you know, documents how that's going. But no, that's a great, and you know, it's things like that. I know we're all, like, always really excited about the really shiny stuff that's coming out, but actually, that's the day-to-day thing that just makes everything so much easier. That's what we all want, right?
It's fascinating, isn't it? Because like, it seems like it's not meant to be the sexy stuff, because .NET 5 is very much about re-leveling really everything. It's the unification of APIs and all this stuff that doesn't read well on a spreadsheet, but actually is super, super foundational for all the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Okay, so Laurent, I mean, I'm going to give you another opportunity to answer maybe what your favorite thing. I know you gave us a great overview, but is there one thing that really stands out to you as your favorite?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I like what David was saying about running, .NET 5 on was it a Pi? I think it was a Raspberry Pi, right? The control
it was.
Using, yeah. And I mean, for me, it participates to what we were talking about before, which is really you can have .NET on so many platforms. So I thought it was really good I think my favorite talk is probably the one with, the C#9 talk, because I just love Matt and Dustin Campbell, Matt Sorgerson and Dustin Campbell, especially the interaction they have. And it was coming out.
You said this was going to happen as well, Carol.
Yeah,
Did I
we
not
were
tell
warned.
you about 2:30 was when Jensen decided he wanted company?
It's fine. You
Good.
can stay. We'll ask him what his favorite feature of .NET 5 is.
Kissed him off.
What makes you purr?
Now you're getting into the blind date spirit.
Yeah. So anyway, the C# improvement. This talk is really. It's always fun to see them. But I think from a feature standpoint, what is standing out for me is how much easier they are making it to deploy .NET stuff to the client, but also to Azure. And like the GitHub Actions and all these kind of things. And also, one thing which is amazing is that .NET 5 comes out last week. What was it, on Thursday or Wednesday? I forget. And the same day it's available on Azure. And I cannot imagine the feat of engineering for everything to be ready, at the same time. And this is really cool.
So I had this weird story actually, where during the keynote for .NET Conf, I ported my blog to .NET 5 release version, and it ran. Everything worked. It was supported on GitHub Actions. The Azure App Services were already updated, and I was live tweeting it as I went, thinking, "Go on, when's it going to happen? When's the funny bit going to happen where it doesn't work?" Right, and I was just going for it, and it worked. Like, there was one setting I had to change the target framework in my Azure App Services, and I was actually blown away. Like, because I mean, how long did it take for 3.1 to get onto App Services from 2? It was like a 9-month bleed through.
I think so. And the promise coming forward is really that every time there is a major release, it will be available the same day on Azure. So that's the promise. I cannot even imagine the project managers. Their planning must be very scary, I think.
Other people's jobs.
Okay, so finally, Carol, what was your biggest highlight?
So I asked Jensen. I think everything that everyone's already said, but the thing that really impressed me, like, as someone who tries to do talks and stuff, is just how, like, polished the talks and everything were. Like, the demos, like, you only had 25-30 minutes. Some of those they were just like perfect. You can tell they've been rehearsed, and everything was just really great. So as someone who watching the talks, just like as an attendee, but as a speaker as well, it was like really impressive. Just the level of detail that went into it.
Yeah, I think, and I think, like 25 minutes. I think that's that's a stretch of like human attention span for a virtual event as well, and probably a physical event. But we've never really tested it before. But we know that now, so it's amazing that you can cram all of that stuff in to that time. And actually, that's one of the reasons why on this show we never go for like a full hour just talking about one thing, because that after a while you need to sort of change gears. And so we are going to change gears at this point. We're gonna ask some different questions, and it's maybe going to be like one of those controversial questions this time. So I was thinking, it's really exciting, all the stuff we've seen recently. The new announcements, bringing things together, the investment in Blazor. But I think we can probably say out loud that there still needs to be more done to bring new people in to the .NET community. And I'm thinking about not just more women, but more young people, more ethnic minorities, and improving the inclusion in general in the community. So with risk of being slightly controversial, I'd love to get people's views on how we make that more inclusive, and how we welcome in, and how we get sort of students that who are maybe computer science students at university, or maybe apprentices stepping out into software development. How do we get them to think, I'm going to learn C#, I'm going to adopt the .NET framework for my projects in the future, versus maybe looking at some of the other popular languages. Mm-hmm. And we'll go through again, starting with David.
Cool. Like, not a big topic at all. I just want to open with like a real all caps first statement, which is diversity does not mean one of each. Like, it does not just mean let's get more women into technology, which is what I think perhaps our historical community efforts have been pushed towards a little bit. I feel like it's really, really important. There's a bit of an optics problem with how cool or otherwise .NET is, right? Like we're an old framework that's arguably gone through a rebrand recently, and kind of, the tech is different now. It's been rebuilt, but it's really, really important that if you want your communities to be more diverse, that you treat the people in your communities that are diverse with the empathy and the platforms that they deserve too. It's much like when people in organizations say, oh, how can we get more women or diverse candidates to apply from us? You should always be like, well, how do you treat the women and people from diverse backgrounds who are currently in your organization? Because if the answer is poorly, then you're not going to win anything, right? So I strongly believe that we need to tailor and vary the kinds of events that we hold with the types of people that we promote and put on stage to match the audiences that exist in the world, because anyone from a single background cannot represent everyone from many backgrounds. It's very, very simple. We're better together, and we're better with that diversity and the wealth of experience that it brings. So I think it's going to involve a lot of work from our communities and our community leaders to vary the types of events, the focus of events. Even not wanting to be critical of .NET Conf particularly, but where was Unity? There was one talk about Unity, and it's probably 30% of the community running C#. Is that representative of the interests of our audience? Who knows, right? And I think there's these same kinds of silos and sub-communities and breadth of topics need to be elevated more than just, hey, here's how you get a web page to render a number from my database, because that's kind of where the focus has historically been, possibly due to Microsoft's business focus, and that's not a crime in and of itself. But the fact that, as Lauren was saying earlier, that .NET can do so much has pushed me into this place where I want to focus on all the weird stuff .NET can do, because if you don't focus on that, you're not going to get people from diverse backgrounds that are interested in different things.
Cool.
So I kind of feel like it's meeting everyone and the community halfway. Tech.
So, Carol, I'd like to bring you in, because you actually run some specific groups. I think it's Ladies in Code Glasgow. You're the chair of that committee.
Yeah, I'm the Glasgow lead for Ladies of Code, yeah. And it's not a .NET specific community, it's just coders in general, from all different stacks and frameworks and backgrounds as well. So we've got people from kind of still in bootcamp learning, we've got students, and then we've got people that are seniors and leads as well. So it's being you'd think it'd be a women's meetup. It is actually really diverse as well. It's for, and guys come along as well if the talks are something that they're interested in. We more than welcome them. So it's a really diverse group from technology and from a kind of background of people.
Brilliant. And Jess, you've been active in our MVP community for a little while now, and so we've had a lot of conversations inside that community around diversity and inclusion. But what do you think about what we specifically can do in .NET?
I think a lot of my viewpoints overlie with David's actually. And I mean, when I came into this industry, I ran a Women in Tech group myself, very similar to yourself. And it exposed me to a lot, which was good. But as you say, diversity is much more than just your gender or your color of skin or otherwise. I think we can learn a lot from other languages. So the likes of JavaScript, they are very open about, they have back-end dev, they have front-end dev, they have designers being brought in, and it's more wide than just, we are this particular type of coder in JavaScript, whereas .NET feels like we're a C# web developer, we do IoT, we are a Unity dev. It's much more segregated. But I think this is a lot better now as well, because with the improvements with .NET 5 and .NET going cross-platform, it lowers a lot of those barriers. So you don't have to have a Windows laptop. You can be developing on a Mac. You can be doing things a lot more easily. You can skip from one thing to another and not really have to change your language that much. So I think by learning from the JavaScript community, from communities like Python as well, we can learn how to open up our communities more, make it more accessible to more people, and hopefully people will organically come in. But there will be work as well, obviously, to make it more of a welcoming space and make people want to do .NET from the start.
Yeah, I agree. And I think getting people from the start of their career as well, so students or folks doing boot camps, I think it's not on the curriculum at these places, or not a lot of the time anyway. It was Java for me at uni, and I know people that are doing boot camps a lot of the time it's JavaScript. So maybe it's kind of maybe now that .NET is kind of open source and cross-platform, like you say, Jess, that might help. Maybe some of the boot camps or the university courses will pick up .NET, and then that's what people know when they go out to the workplace when they look for jobs.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's not that common.
With the improvements in the CLI as well, like it used to be, you had to open Visual Studio to create a new project, delete half of it if you're using a template, and it was a bit of a nightmare. Now you just .NET new, boom, you're there.
You're totally right.
It's so much easier to learn now.
Yeah, and it's very like the JavaScript side. Like it's a lot of the things that we can now do is the things that JavaScript developers have maybe been able to do for a while.
It's worth thinking, though, isn't it, that it's probably not a technology problem. And I think maybe some of our communities get very lost into thinking that it's a technology problem. It's not that .NET or C# was ever a bad framework or a bad runtime. Quite the opposite. It was always spectacularly well designed and really fast. There's something about the age of the community on average, and the kind of the expectations of the style of events that has hurt it. And like, I really strongly feel that pushing forwards, that maybe the role of the .NET Foundation should be doing things like engaging with boot camps when boot camps are starting to write their curriculums, or engaging with universities, or providing support and materials for those people. You know, why are we not sponsoring academies? Why are they not being self-organized? I think it takes a little bit more than just, oh, well, the framework's kind of good now, because I mean, the framework was better than all the JavaScript frameworks for the first 5 years of Node, and Node is only 10 years old, right? So it's not a technology problem. It's, I don't want to say it's a people problem, but it's an organizational problem. And I think unless that the community organizes and engages in a really, really measured, pragmatic, and structured way, you know, I don't want to see a world where, say, Vercel are launching a new platform service and it doesn't support .NET Core on day one. There's no reason it can't technologically. The binaries are all there, but it's not a binary problem; it's a culture problem, right?
I would totally agree. And it's also, I kind of use JavaScript as an example because I've done quite a bit of JavaScript, and it's what I started in as well. And
the communities are great, right?
And
like they're really great events.
And all you have to do is it's a quick Google and you immediately find what you're looking for. And there's like 100 different resources for one thing. Whereas I find it a little bit more tricky with .NET in particular, with C#, because I'm not an F# developer, unfortunately, haven't delved into that yet. But
there's some joke about, but who is?
But with C#, it is a lot more difficult to find those resources or talk to someone who you feel safe with, or otherwise when you're brand new. Especially, I came into the industry late, and as a late starter, it feels incredibly awkward to begin with.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing discussion. I'm afraid that we're almost out of time. Learn TV will soon cut us off. And I know we've not even really scratched the surface of the question of bringing new people into .NET.
It's a really tough question, but I really enjoyed the conversation. I was telling Adam on the chat that I was happy to let people talk and take notes. I do like the new .NET Foundation went through elections, and I thought this is already a good step in the right direction. So just wanted to mention that quickly.
I agree. I was going to mention that too. I totally agree with you on that one. Maybe we can keep the conversation around how we grow the community, diversity and otherwise, maybe on Twitter, and people can join in.
Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like an hour is not long enough, right?
No.
Yeah,
absolutely. So, well, we do have a hashtag, which is Cloud Skills. So if you want to join us afterwards and have a chat about that, that would be amazing. And actually, we will touch upon this in future shows as well as we talk about other technologies. This isn't a unique thing to to the .NET community. A lot of communities have these similar challenges, how to continually reinvent themselves, continually stay new. I think that because because I'm in the Microsoft ecosystem, it's the one that I'm most familiar with, and it's something that we're all very keen to solve. But we are literally out of time, so I am going to just say a huge thank you to in the order that you're on screen, to David. Thank you very much to Jessica. We'll see you again, Jessica, fourth time maybe. To Laurent. And a very, very special thank you to our co-host today, Carol, as well. Huge thank you for doing that. We will see you all very soon on the Cloud Skills Show. We're back next week, and we are covering AI next week. So we have some very special guests to be confirmed in the next couple of days, but do join us same time and same place. And huge thank you to everyone today. See you again soon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Adam.
All right.